Hey everybody, how are you today? We're going to talk about mistakes, and look at that, I just made one with the microphone not being off. If you're with us now, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how things are going for you. Memory palace mistakes are going to happen. They happen all the time, and they're good. They always teach us powerful and profound lessons. And one of the things that we need to do is not go trying to avoid making mistakes, because if we don't make mistakes, we don't learn, and we have an opportunity in our memory training to continue to make great gains from learning from the mistakes that we made. And this is true in life in general. And this is a very important principle, because so many people are being locked into prisons of zero progress because they won't make mistakes. They're afraid of mistakes. And we have it in our culture, actually. If you've ever read or seen a performance of Oedipus Rex, there's this kind of fear of, what will happen if you investigate and you find out the truth. And that truth is not what you want to know, what you want to discover about yourself, about others, etc. That's deep in our culture, and it's a fear that we can learn to tackle and combat. And Oedipus Rex is an interesting play because it's also often misread as being a example of, the hero's flaw, too much ambition, being the downfall, the Achilles heel, etc. I don't read it that way, actually. I think it's a little bit more nuanced and profound than that. It's courage to go and find the solution at any cost in order to save a society, in order to make it possible for a society to thrive. And that's a very important thing to consider when you do your memory training, is that you got to be in it to make yourself survive, to thrive, to be the best possible version of yourself, to help others. Because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble, right? So this is really important. Part of how we unlock our best possible selves is to thrive, to solve problems. And we're going to make mistakes along the way. And those mistakes can severely help us. Severely help us is not the right term there, but can help us in ways that are going to have very dramatic impact on our practice. So it's very important. If you're joining us, say hello, hit thumbs up, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how things are going for you today. And one of the things that we're going to start with is the issue of drawing your memory palace poorly, because it's a mistake that a lot of people worry about. They think, well, I'm going to make, and it's just making memory palaces in general. I'm going to make a mistake with the memory palace. I don't want to make a mistake. I get so many emails where people say, I just, I want to get it right from the get-go. And this is a problem, because there is no right from the get-go. You need to explore it. You need to feel it. You need to have it in your tangible grasp, what this is, how it's going to work, etc. I even get messages from people who say, well, I don't want to, draw them at all. And so I have in the description for you below a number of links, and one of them is the tactical reasons why you should be drawing memory palaces. And so the last person who emailed me, I sent them that, and they said, oh, you're right, I'm going to start doing this, which is very important, and a very good thing, actually, that they're doing that, because if you're not drawing your memory palaces, you are missing out in a big way, in multiple ways, the strategies that can come from that. All right. So if you're with us now, or you're watching the replay, as a little announcement, Jimmy Narain and I are updating one of our courses, and we have some links for people to get this course for free. He recently changed the name of the course. We're a bit perplexed about why it hasn't been more popular, so we want some feedback from people. So if you'd like to get it free for feedback, let me know. Be in touch via email, and you can let me know as well now, but I will say get in touch via email for one of these coupon codes so you can check it out for free. It will help you with habits, help you with consistency, help you craft a plan for your success, And that is something I'm looking forward to getting into everybody's hands. Another little limited opportunity here coming soon. I'm going to email out tomorrow about the 2 free copies of Ultra Learning, which looks very strange with the green screen here, but looking forward to giving those out, the giveaway for that. And also those lucky winners will also get a copy of the Memory Connection to go with their copy of Ultra Learning. So stay tuned for an email tomorrow, provided you're on my email list. Now, if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. David is in the house. Good to see you, David. Thank you for saying hello. Yeah, so making mistakes. The first mistake that we were talking about is people worry about not drawing, or that they're going to make a mistake when they draw their memory palaces. They're going to make a mistake when they're making their memory palaces. They want to have the whole picture and so forth, and not make any of those mistakes. And the reality is you can get the whole picture by drawing the memory palaces and making mistakes. It's good if you have a full training, a full and complete training, and you're able to actually, see all of the possible problems that you might get, but you need to actually have those problems in order to enable yourself to learn at the fullest possible level. And that's part of what's going on in Ultra Learning. So I look forward to giving some of those copies away. But if you're worried about making mistakes with your memory palace, then make sure you watch the tactical reasons to draw them in the description below and enable yourself to get over that. So we'll talk about some more memory palace mistakes as we go on. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and hit that thumbs up for the love of memory. And yeah, so mistakes are super, super important. And another mistake that people worry about is that they're going to forget parts of the journey. And this really shouldn't be an issue. It can happen. But if you create the memory palaces properly from the get-go, then you will have no issue whatsoever in figuring out how to fix the problem if that you encounter it. And this is one of the issues that comes up, is that you often don't have any problems if you aren't diving in and actually in the territory. So they say that the map is not the territory. And if you haven't mapped it out, how could you ever forget parts of the journey? And if you follow some certain principles that are in the free course, you will find that you don't forget anything, because you're building your memory palace based on what's already in your memory anyway. So the whole thing is you'll learn more about how to do that properly if you're willing to make the mistake, if you're willing to allow yourself to forget parts of a journey. The other thing too to keep in mind here is that so many people, they don't remember buildings and so forth, which is perfectly fine. If you just dive in and allow yourself to work with what you got, then you'll see that you have lots and lots and lots of options, and you don't have to really even use a journey as such. We don't use that term that much in the Magnetic Memory Method, and it's because it's not really about a journey at the end of the day. Spatial memory, visual memory, emotional memory, all these different levels of memory come into play, and you don't have to journey. That's something I learned from Nelson Dellis, and I'm always really grateful for being able to talk to so many of the memory competitors who really, when you think about it, don't have a whole lot of time in the competition setting to be journeying around. And yet, because it's a spatial practice, there is a sense of movement. This is this because it's not this. And so how do you get from this to this? Well, you take a journey. But one of the things that you'll find is that language is the solution, but it's also the problem. So how we talk about things is the solution to how we get better. And that's why I always encourage people to write out their problems, use the Feynman technique to describe their problems, because language is part of the solution. But I was talking with Braden Adams today on the podcast we're recording, and we were talking about the shadow, which is really a super fascinating memory technique. And it's just so difficult to describe it in words. And yet it's the solution. So, so many people who are struggling with these techniques, they really need to use the power of words, but see the limits of words, because we might call it a journey, but it's not really journeying anywhere, right? And we might use all these terms, but it's not really about the terms. So it's really, really important to think those things through. Reclaiming William, Reclaiming Life is in the house. Good to see you. Says, hello, my friends and family. Thus far, I only see Anthony and David, who are both family, but I'm sure friends will join as the steam goes on. I hope so. I personally had a bit of a rough start this morning, but apropos our topic today, which is all about making mistakes, and you've got to just dive in and make those mistakes. And of course, these live streams are a little bit like the magician on the street. So how does the magician on the street work? He starts to do some stuff and he grabs a kid as soon as he can, and he gets that kid inside the rope and brings the rope close to the table. And why the kid? Because the kid has parents. And so when the kid is now engaged in the magic trick, the parents are trapped. And then if you can get that rope closer and closer, and then the people who now start to see what's going on trapped behind the parents, or actually, get them in front of the parents so that they're trapped, and then you grab more spectators and so forth. You get more and more people. Thank you, William, for being involved. And then we have more and more interactivity and engagement. So a lot of this starts off very rusty as we build up steam, as Reclaiming Life says, but it does have a little bit of that street magicianship and the power of social proof, etc., etc. So if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world and say hello in the chat. Lewis is here, says hello. Good day, everyone. Hello, Lewis. Thanks for being here. And incidentally, when Reclaiming Life says, so far only family, well, this is done for the Magnetic Memory Method family, of course. And obviously, this is a public service to encourage people to find memory techniques to train, to use them, to get over some of the bad worries and fears and concerns that hold you back. And the 3 mistakes that we talked about today should be embraced. Don't flee from them, because you might cause yourself problems that you don't need to suffer if you would just embrace the problems. So we started with, worrying about making the memory palace correctly. There is no correct. There's only what you learn from the journey, so to speak, of making multiple memory palaces. And so many people want it to be just one memory palace, Well, that's never going to work. It's just not possible. And again, I was talking with Braden Adams today, and he's like, I don't have nearly enough memory palaces. Yet he has some pretty impressive stats with competition and so forth. And and then people worry about, well, what if I forget parts of the journey? Or what if I can't remember this or that aspect of this or that memory palace? Dive in anyway. You'll learn so much about what to do, should that be the case. And you won't learn if you don't do it. So maybe we're preaching to the converted here, but we do need our reminders, even if we're already converted, don't we? I know I sure do. All right. So if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, and what you're thinking. Reclaiming Life says, my parents took my nephew to a carnival fair today and told me they saw a magician there, but said he was doing very cheesy street magic type entry levitation that kids like. Well, in that case, if kids like it and they're having fun, I'm not sure I would vilify him. I really admire anybody who can get out on the street and entertain people. It takes a fair amount of guts, actually, to perform anything, especially magic. And levitation is, if you can pull it off, then that's great. In any case, I make that parallel to street magicians because this sort of live setting has that sort of parallel, and you see similar elements of social proof and so forth going on. And the 80-20 rule, of course, which is fascinating to behold week after week. And as you say, I'm just so glad that he's getting exposure to magic of any sort. Indeed, magic is the key. All right, so I think this one's pretty clear. Just avoid that. Don't worry about how much of your potential memory palaces you remember. Don't worry about whether you're going to forget parts of the journey. Actually embrace that, experience it, and through experience, develop tools that would enable you to deal with those issues. Because one of the things that will come up again and again and again in your practice is that you're going to forget certain things. And that's actually a good thing. It's a very good thing. It's a very important thing. And one of the things that it helps you do is make better decisions. I'm reading Decisive right now. Shout out to my friend Ollie Richards from iwillteachyoualanguage.com who suggested this. And a huge part of this is analyzing the mistakes that you've made so that you're able to improve. And you just don't gain anything by sitting around hoping to not make mistakes. It just doesn't help. at all, right? All right. So Senator Skull is in the house, joining from Denver, Colorado. I have 2 kids, 6 and 8 years old. I'm looking to help them build a small memory palace. Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. Great username, by the way, Senator Skull. I like that. And Colorado is a nice state. Wonderful, wonderful. So 6 and 8. On the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, Senator Skull, there are 2 episodes, and each of them is with a 10-year-old. So I suggest that you look those up. You can get in touch by email, or maybe we can find them for you right now while we're waiting for people to wake up and join us in the chat. Hello, hello, hello. One of them is called Tap the Mind of a 10-year-old Memory Palace Master. But you know what I would encourage you to do is learn these techniques for yourself so that you can actually demonstrate these things for you. So the first one was Alicia Crosby, if memory serves, and her dad was John. So that's kind of the fun thing about these episodes, is that they're both with their dads. So I'll pop that link for you in the chat there. And the other one was with Imogen Ayers and her dad, Kevin, if memory serves. And sometimes it does, more often than not. All right. So I think this is the linky link for you here. Yes, indeed it is. And I really love when people check out these older episodes. When I was talking to Braden today, he wasn't aware of just how many episodes that there are going back into history. And he wasn't even aware that one of our episodes was actually co-hosted. Well, it was not co-hosted, it was guest hosted by Nelson Dellis. So there's a lot of treasure back in the archives. And one of the mistakes that people make is they're always after the new. But we have an evergreen topic, so please go back and listen to those older episodes. Yes, some of my technology was not up to speed, and yes, I was heavily medicated on a lot of those early episodes, but they started this community and they have played their role. Anyway, Senator Skull, please check those out and let them help you help your kids. And I would encourage you to actually pick up the skills yourself, because when you start with yourself and you demonstrate the power, then I think the kids will perk up in the same way that kids often do when they see cool things that their parents are doing. I wouldn't have played guitar if I hadn't seen my dad being so amazing on guitar. All right. Reclaiming Life says, definitely see a parallel, especially since I'm into memory and have done my fair share of street performance. Awesome. I hope to see that one day if you ever do it again. Adam is in the house, says, I only use linear memory palaces to memorize things in a certain order. If I need to memorize things in general, say vocabulary, I'll just populate a palace, but it won't have a linear path. Thanks for that, Adam. That's great. Good to see you here. Thanks for being here. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And yeah, so, you know, that's another sort of issue. It's not really a mistake issue or anything like that. But one of the things is that people think of memory palaces as linear, but they're not necessarily. You tend to memorize one thing at a time, so to speak, but sometimes you'll memorize more than one thing at a time. Again, Braden and I, it's so interesting to do lots of interviews with people because so many things come up out of the weeds. We were talking, I mentioned the Galbraith principle, which I think his name was Norman Galbraith. Anyway, Reclaiming Life probably knows that. And it's in some of the memdex, not all of them, or not. It's not that the Galbraith principle is in them, but there's echoes of that sort of thing. In any case, there's interesting things inside of cards that are nonlinear. They're alinear when you really dig into the memorization of things, even if you're memorizing one thing at a time in a linear row. And that's part of what the shadow thing is. So stay tuned for that episode with Braden. I think you'll like it. All right. Reclaiming Life says to Senator Skull, advice Anthony gave me before with my nephew who is 4 was great. Take the journey physically and then make the station things they're very interested in and or practical to them. I used both techniques with my nephew, based first on things he was very interested in. Then he used those images himself to see magnetic imagery with the new topics connected to his interests. Yeah, that's good too. Yeah. So thanks for that. And yeah, you want to put in all the kinds of things that you can do. So William is saying Scott Galbraith. No, I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, it's Norman Galbraith who came up with the Galbraith principle. Let me see here in the Google card principle, something like that. And Norman Galbraith. He's not coming up. Maybe it's Scott Galbraith. I'll have to see radio silence as we look this up. Galbraith principle. I'm sure it's from a mathematician named Norman Galbraith. A Galbraith shuffle is a way to shuffle a deck of cards named after mathematician Norman Galbraith. Sweet. So, the good old magnetic memory is not so bad today. But I don't know who Scott Galbraith is, Reclaiming Life, but if he's in the magic world, let's find out. But I was thinking of Norman Galbraith, and there he is. So the Wikipedia on the Galbraith, oh, maybe it's not even spelled Galbraith. So I always call it Galbraith, but Gilbraith. So something was wrong with my memory after all. But that's probably why you're thinking of Galbraith. I'm pretty sure when I heard, what's his name? Max Maven. I'm pretty sure that Max Maven pronounces it more Galbraith when I heard it. I've actually never looked it up until now. But this is another issue in memory where you'll sometimes hear things a certain way and you'll memorize it that way. And if you've never seen it printed, then you can make that sort of mistake. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I've seen it before and I just haven't noticed it. But I've always pronounced it Galbraith. There's an interesting video anyway where Max Maven gives a lecture. It's on YouTube. Gilbraith. I'll bet you any money I go and watch it, and he will, well, he'll call it Gilbraith. But in any case, I'm 80% deaf in this year. I mishear all kinds of stuff. It is my one major issue all the time. I'll never forget this one time I memorized this guy's name, and it was Darren, but I couldn't tell if it was Darren or Daryl because he was across the room. And so when I came to do my demonstration to memorize, to recall all the names, I said Dara something, and it was great. Anyway, I put extra pressure to memorize that it's Darren, not Daryl. And then when I met him again, I saw him in the park and I got it right. And then I put extra pressure on myself to memorize his wife's name at that time. And so, in any case, these things are unnecessary pressures that we can make on ourselves. But the whole thing is that the value of the mistake is, okay, so now it's spelled Gilbraith, but is it pronounced Galbraith? We had on our show before a guy named Jared Guzens, and his name is spelt Gerard, but we pronounce it Jared. And so there's all these kinds of things in life. And if you let those kinds of things, those mistakes, Gilbraith, Galbraith, if you let that bowl you over, you're never going to get anywhere really with life in general, right? You got to just be able to absorb it, turn it into a lesson. So now the question is, if I go back and watch that and I'm just like, where the hell did I get Galbraith from? Max Maven is definitely pronouncing it Gilbraith. Then I have to think, well, how am I going to fix it, right? And so I'm obviously not going to use, I can't think of her name actually at the moment, the actress who plays Wonder Woman in the most recent movies. Her name is Gal something, right? Probably her full name will come to me in a second. Jonathan Levy and I saw her one time in Tel Aviv, and I didn't know that it was her, but she was with her boyfriend or her bodyguard or something, and Jonathan was like, you know who that is? And this was long before Wonder Woman ever showed up, and I was like, no idea. Anyway, I knew who it was later when I saw Wonder Woman, but I can't think of her last name at the moment because I've never memorized it, but I'm pretty sure Gal Gadot, maybe something like that. No, can't be that. Taro. Anyway, this is the thing. This is the thing that we have to show up with in life, is that we will make mistakes. We can't possibly capture it all, but we want to get as much as we can. I don't think it's Gal Taro. I think it's Gal Gadot or something like that. Gal Wonder Woman. Let's look it up. Why not? And then we can think about how to fix Gilbraith principle. Gal Gadot. Not Gadot. Gadot. Okay, I got it. I was close enough. But, you got to also just enjoy life. Close enough principle, right? And so Galbraith, I got to figure out how to fix it. Darren, I at that time just said Dara, and he was just like, yeah, well, they were still happy with my performance, etc., etc. I was invited back 3 more times to do 3 more memory stunts at that particular business. So there you go, right? Like if you worry about making that kind of mistake, you're going to be in trouble. So don't worry about making mistakes. Embrace them. There are lessons. So now let's just say it's Galbraith. Then I was gonna think, well, I gotta get that gal out of there. So Gil, I remember a kid that I knew whose name was Gil, Gil, and maybe I put fish gills on Max Maven now because I've never seen this Norman Galbraith. Why that I even remember that his first name was Norman, I have no idea. I can't remember what mnemonics I would have used. I can't remember what mnemonics I would have used for the first one. But yeah, it's just an interesting issue. The real game, the real benefit is the question: how am I going to fix this, and what am I going to learn from the mistake? Because they're going to happen. They happen today, and it's just like, just thinking of this actress. What was her name? And then I guessed at it, and I was pretty close. But I'd never actually used memory techniques to do it. Also, again, Braden Adams and I on our podcast that we recorded this morning, which will be out soon, we talked about this kind of natural memory advantages that some people have and that some people don't. And really, it's a lot of the same thing. It's just memory techniques that are used without being consciously used. So in any case, let me catch up with the chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. David said, just started bringing bridging figures into my recall rehearsal. I have someone like Woody Woodpecker explain to me what's in station 1, 2, or 3, or I explain to him what is there. Working well. Excellent, David. That's great to hear. So yeah, this bi-channel sort of, it explaining to me explaining to it. Excellent, excellent. That's a wonderful way to do it. Tirolis is in the house. Thanks again for the streaming. 21 hours from Brazil. Okay, so I guess you're at 9 p.m. in Brazil. Excellent. Thanks for being here, Tirolis. Good to see your name. All right. Reclaiming Life says not familiar with Galbraith shovel, so the big G will need to teach me something new too. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I think that Woody Aragon has a little bit of the Galbraith built into his deck stack, memorandum stack. So wonderful, wonderful stuff. I'm not sure though, but in any case, there's more than one Galbraith principle in it, so check it out, because yeah, I want to look more into it now that it comes up. In any case, Lewis says, my children are using these techniques. I showed it to them like a game. They are 9 and 7. They learned the solar system, the leaders of Barbados, and the first 10 digits beyond the point of pi. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing these with your kids. That's wonderful to hear. And as you say, it is fun to see them develop. Excellent. So I hope these podcast episodes I shared with you in our chat will help you. And wonderful. Reclaiming Life says, I'm 95% stupid in this brain, so my brain and your ear both make life more fun because of the challenges they present. Oh, indeed, indeed. I often make that joke that my PhD stands for piled higher and deeper. There's nothing... I believe in the intelligence of all people. Now, obviously, a lot of people don't stop to think, but I'm a big skeptic, not really a skeptic, but I'm a proponent of a certain level of equality in all people to get those two nuts rolling around in their head and banging together a little bit more often than not. But believe me, when I call the academic world piled higher and deeper, I mean it, because there are times where I'm just like, how can I have 2 MAs and a PhD and not have figured that out, right? And it doesn't have anything to do. You can be very skilled and have a lot of proclivities in this, that area and so forth, and be a complete moron in another area. And we're all like that, aren't we? If you ever want an instructive sort of book to read, it's not very happy, but it has a great instructive opening, which is Cormac McCarthy's Child of God. And it says there on that first page, or maybe the second page in the edition you look at, depends on how it was printed, that the anti-hero you're about to meet might be a child of God, just like you. Just like you and me. Never memorized it, but it's something like that. And it's very instructive. So one of the great things that you'll encounter in your life is your own humility. And if you can dive into it and get over yourself and just embrace mistakes, you're going to have so much more fun. But also embrace that part of yourself that wants to be error-free. And you are, actually. We've been twittering around the last day or so. Scott Gosnell had a great tweet from Giordano Bruno, a great quote about the light, the purity of the light and so forth. And we have some of that. We have consciousness. Our consciousness is unfettered. It's unstained. It's just there, right? It doesn't have all of these human ego la-di-da issues, this worldliness, all this silly concern over nothing, much ado over about nothing, as Shakespeare would have it. And we can just carry on. And as David says, autocorrect got me. And, we can put things where as it goes, and then strive to correct autocorrect. As the great William S. Burroughs said, control seeks to control control. Reclaiming Life says, was that a quote from Child of God? Well, it was not an exact quote because I've never memorized it, but interesting book. Boom, 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 boom. Reclaiming Life says, all I know is the girl who randomly asked me out tonight is named Sam, short for Samantha, and she turns 19 on 20th December and has a sister who's 18 with a niece who is... I'm not sure what your math is there with the ampersand, but her grandfather died on 14th February 2015. Great. I mean, that's a cool kind of thing to know. John is here. Good to see you, John. Thanks for being here. 7:51 p.m. in Northeast Ohio. Honored to be aboard. Honored to have you here. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And great. All right, so we've got our first two Memory Palace mistakes that are okay to make. It's okay to make sloppy Memory Palace drawings. It's not okay to not draw your memory palaces, or it's less than okay. You can if you want. But every time I show the video that I've linked to you down to below on the tactical reasons why you should be drawing your memory palaces, people go, yeah, okay, I will. Because there's too many benefits to be had from just making a simple drawing. But don't get precious about it. The best drawings are just sketched out rapidly without thinking about it too much. And free from distraction, of course. So... coming up soon on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast is an episode with Nir Eyal, who wrote Indistractable. And one of the things that you want to do, and it is a mistake that'll kill you, is trying to do anything while you're distracted. So please remove distractions from your life. And you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed and not missing any podcast episode, because I can't believe the master class that he crammed into our podcast episode. And you should read this book and follow it up. It's like the textbook. Very, very important. All right. So William says, it's so much fun to know the major method and have random palaces available to be able to memorize ages and dates so quickly. Yeah. Glad that you mentioned that. Yeah. On the weekend, we were at the market. There's this guy, David is his name, and I want him to come on the podcast. He's like the local historian of our neighborhood. And I memorized his number, and I was doing a little memory demonstration and memorized some dates about the historical presentation he was showing in the market there. And just really fun to have the major ready to go like that. I hope he'll come on the podcast. I got to follow up with him and call, because he has lots of ideas about remembering from a historical angle about people's neighborhoods and so forth, which is obviously great for memory palace creation. And he showed all these photos of what our neighborhood looks like 100 years ago, 1908. So it's just really amazing, the history. And then it gives you ideas and start to think of more memory palace locations. And so anyway, really interesting guy. I hope he'll come on. And I remember his phone number. He gave me his business card too, but I still could pull it out at the mists of time here because of the major. And wonderful. All right, so Tiroles says, is it okay to draw using digital tools such as Illustrator or even PowerPoint? Yeah, I mean, okay, sure. Do I look like I'm some kind of memory palace police? Am I the Stasi is there a Stasi who's going to come in the middle of the night and arrest you for doing such a thing? Let the outcome be the one that says whether it's okay or not. If you're not getting results, then try it the way I suggest. And then if you're not getting results from that, make sure you're actually doing it the way that I suggest. And I always encourage everybody, experiment. Learn from your experiments. the biggest mistake you can make is not experimenting. But you don't need the okay of anybody. You know, I was watching Gene Simmons on an interview the other day, and he's so amazing. He's so funny. He said, you know, there's all these gophers all over the world, and they're just hiding down. And then there's this one gopher who puts his head up and looks around and is, hey, I'm here. I'm the gopher who's going to take over the world and all that sort of stuff, right? And the rest are just waiting for permission. You don't need permission. Just do what you think is right. And then if it ain't working out, then you go to somebody who's had some experiences and can help you solve the problem. So this is the core, one of the core arguments in this book, Decisive, is that, you know, you've got to experiment, but if it's not working out, you've got to go to the people who have the knowledge and then essentially do what they say because they've been there before. But always experiment. Follow your ideas. I mean, in the realm of memory, I'm not saying experiment with bizarre things that have nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But within the realm of the memory palace, memory training, etc., experiment. And Reclaiming Life seconds the urging that I always give to use pen and paper. Now, the thing is why? Why do I recommend this? Why is it so important? Well, penmanship is known to have a lot to do with training your brain, right? And so even if you do it sloppily, it's more than 160 muscles from here to here. What controls those muscles? Is it the gas station down the street? Is it, oh, I don't know, Joker on the moon getting married to Batman? If Braden's watching, that might be a fun thing for him. No, it's none of those things. It's your brain, right? So if you think of the amount of muscles that are getting exercised with this on a screen, it's not nearly as tactile. Now, I don't know, maybe you do this on screens. I have no idea. But that's just one layer, right? Another layer is the organic nature of it and Stephen Koslin's arguments in the case for mental imagery about one-to-one correspondences and how memory works in the brain, how it's stored, how it's layered, and how that it's somehow got these, well, he literally uses that term, one-to-one correspondences. So I'm not a neuroscientist, and I thought that you should draw along before this, but it seems an additional steam there. Also, you know, you might think of issues of management of data, right? And the depth of where things are in your own record of production. So, you know, for example, where is halfway through this book, right? Well, it's approximately right there. Where is halfway through my Kindle book, right? Or where is slide 15 in my slide deck? I use PowerPoint presentations and so forth. I've even experimented with using them for memory palaces. There's a whole presentation in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind memory vault that you can go through showing you some strategies and techniques for doing that. But it never has beaten just simply making simple squares on a piece of paper. And I think that there's many, many reasons why. So, Reclaiming Life. Seien Sie vorsichtig mit der Verwendung von Stasi. Du bist ein weißer Mann. Es können Sie markiert bekommen. Du hast recht. Ja, vielen, vielen Dank. Das, ja. Also, ja, vielen, vielen Dank. Was kann ich sagen? Ich bin apropos, ich bin der Doktor. Ich habe meine Doktorarbeit abgeschlossen und so, piled higher and deeper. ich bin nicht sicher, wie man das auf Deutsch sagen würde. Piled higher and deeper. Vielen Dank. All right. Kendall Arawak is in the house. Found this gem at a thrift shop when looking for used language books. Vocabulary cartoons. Indeed. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for that suggestion. Kendall, thank you for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. All right. So, seien wir uns vorsichtig, weil die Geheimnispolizei sind hier. Also, enough German for now, but thank you. Vielen Dank. The next mistake, really, that you can make and embrace it is just get started. You don't need to have all the tools in place. Eventually, you should strive to have them. I would highly recommend that you strive to have them, but not everybody has them all in place. And again, I'm thinking of Braden Adams in our discussion this morning, where, he went and competed without the shadow on his side, and he still did great, right? Now he's working on the shadow and using that exclusively. So, great, but he got started and he still did great. You don't need all the bells and whistles to get started. So what are the things you're going to want? Memory Palace, Major, 00 to 99, some alphabet list experience would be great as well, etc., etc. So, but in some sense, it feels like it's a mistake to get started without all those tools, but it's not. You just got to get started. You got to get started somewhere. So let's talk. These are really the 3 mistakes, but let's talk about how to not make them. So there are some unhelpful mental states to avoid. And worrying about mistakes, right? You got to avoid this. You got to avoid worrying about mistakes, because if you get hung up in worrying about mistakes, you're going to stunt your growth. And just on this live stream alone, so many mistakes have been made, including including some language some terminological errors that can make issues for our robot overlords. I wonder how long it will be before even that reference should be avoided. But yeah, mistakes are very, very important. Very, very important. Kirigami is in the house. Memory palaces and mind mapping, great to get started with. Yeah, mind mapping is another tool you might want to have. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing. So, say hello. What I'm trying to get at here is that worrying about mistakes is the quickest way to stunt your growth, your progress, and it's not going to help. And yet I get emails week after week after week. I want to get it right from the get-go. I don't want to make mistakes. You're going to embrace it. It's amazing. It's awesome. But it's understandable, actually. Why? Because there is something called primacy effect, and the way you start can get you in its grip, and you'll potentially have some issues breaking out of the primacy effect. So our preferences are often not our preferences because they work better. They're our preferences because we're stuck in these patterns. And we talked a lot on this program about how to get yourself out of those patterns. But what we need to do is we need to understand that we can get ourselves out of any sort of patterns and improve so long as we keep moving, right? So don't worry about making mistakes. Don't worry that, you might form a preference that you can't get out of. You can get out of it. You can relearn. Again, this coming episode with Braden is going to be great for that, because he talks about how he started in a particular way and then he moved to the shadow, and, he's improving over time, and he may get ghosting from previous things. I don't know. We didn't talk about that, but just, please don't get hung up in all these little worries, even though there is some small reason to be concerned. And even in pronunciation, when you memorize certain pronunciations, there are mistakes, quote unquote mistakes, that, just hang around, that are hard to correct just simply because that's the way you heard it. And we had it today. Like, is it Galbraith or Gilbraith? Well, we'll have to go hear it. I'm pretty sure that I sort of have that feeling, and I might be wrong, but it doesn't really matter because we can fix it. And we saw this with Maricela also, right? It was longer than one would like to remove Maricela and start to have Maricela. And even saying Maricela kind of makes the risk that primacy effect hold over me would come back. But I think we pretty much ground it out, and we ground it out because the primacy effect can be ground out. It can be removed, more or less, right? So it doesn't sort of matter. John says, thanks for the warm welcome to Reclaiming Life. Yes, this area is wonderful during the fall time of year. And just adding to your podcast, Anthony, I recently heard how writing in cursive produces more activity than printing. Yeah, I've read that as well. And we're going to have somebody on the podcast soon whose name is Yannick Silver, who wrote the Cosmic Journal, and he has beautiful cursive writing in it. So I'm going to ask him questions about that. So stay tuned for that. Claiming Life says, yes, we messed up with names, pronunciation of people to do with illusionary magic. Then we didn't think about German phrases that can go either way. As Benny Lewis says, we should strive for 99 mistakes a day. Indeed, indeed. Yeah. There's a guy, Roberto Blake. He had a video recently out. He helps YouTubers, and he just said, make 100 bad videos, right? And it's just a great principle. Don't just embrace mistakes, and get over yourself at the end of the day. I'm not sure where Maricela is. Thanks for asking about her, though. I'm sure if she watches the replay, she'll be very happy that we are thinking of her, because we are. And I'm sure we shall think of her again. And on that note, still working to figure out what to do with our regular meetings there, and I think I have an idea, and I'll probably reach out to a few of you just to see what you think of that very soon. So thank you for your patience. And to be honest, when I look at the archive that we built up, perhaps old Dr. Metivier deserves a little bit of a breather, because there's a lot of stuff in there, and we had a lot of fun as well. So I may allow myself a bit of time to reflect, which reminds me too, as an update, there's been some great things going on with my book, and it's looking like maybe a March, April release. And why would it take that long, even though it's now more or less done? Because it looks like we're going for the big leagues, my friends, as such. So more details on that coming soon. But yeah, it's really exciting what's happening. I've seen a couple mock-ups for the cover. The diagram is really coming along. And more news coming soon. But the patience, I myself have to have patience. So what am I doing to make sure that I avoid unhelpful mental states? I started the next book. Indeed. I also recently finished the Magnetic Chinese course, and so that'll be available soon. And yeah, stay tuned for news. All kinds of things yet to come. Indeed. All right, so what's the next unhelpful mental state? Well, we'll get to that once we check in with our chat. And Tiroli says, all the time I improve the images for some words in my memory palaces. It's easier to recall. If it's easier to recall, I change them. Yeah, change is great. Going in, mucking around, playing with stuff is amazing, improving things. And the more you adventure with this, the more you'll find that you have so much power if you just dive in and play with it. And don't get hung up in all the small stuff. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's really, really important to dive in and explore. Now, Claiming Life says to John, I'm adamant about using cursive when writing. I even made it a point to teach myself the cursive version of Russian writing so I can use for everyday writing. Excellent. Very cool. Claiming Life says, I really need to start my next book. The only one I've written so far was on theology under a pseudonym. Yes, well, please do. And, let me know what that other book is at some point so I can check it out. That would be fun. That would be awesome. I myself have released books under pseudonyms, and that's fun to do. Unfortunately, one is in great risk of removal due to all kinds of things going on these days, but in any case, that's a topic for another day. Now, the next unhelpful mental state I would encourage people to avoid is worrying about how much time it will take. So here's the thing. Planning fallacy is real, but it's more of a help than a hindrance once you know what it is. So things will generally take a little bit longer than you expect, right? That's what planning fallacy is. It's like, okay, so we planned 3 hours for this, then it ends up taking 3 days, right? But if you just give yourself a range and you know that it's probably going to take a little bit longer, then no problem, right? Just dive in. Now, in terms of when it comes to memory, you should never have this worry about how long this is going to take, because it's memory training for life. This is not dabbling for a month or a week or whatever. This is something you should do with the spirit of doing it for life. Literally forever and ever, amen. You should plan, you're on your deathbed, and you're going to be like, okay, so your name, nurse so-and-so, is, and then you're memorizing the name of the nurse, even as you're on your way out, right? Well, hopefully you're in a more comfortable place than a hospital, but, just have that attitude. That's the attitude I have. I'd be like, hey, who wants to see a magic trick? I'm about to die. Oh, pick a card. That'd be a pretty cool way to go out, right? Pretty cool way indeed. But yeah, people just I was wondering, all this aphantasia stuff where people get all hung up about not seeing images in their head. I've been asked to be a little more sensitive about it. So maybe they're not hung up on it. But in any case, I was thinking about this time thing, and I was wondering, maybe I have chronophagia. I really just don't get why people are so hung up on time. Yes, I sometimes get in a time crunch, want to get things done on time. Go, 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 go. Come on, time is running out, etc. Yes, that happens to me. But overall, it's like, come on, relax. You're going to die one day. And time is the same for everybody. There is no special, but time is different for me. No, it's going tick, 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 the same. Relax. Let it go. Enjoy. Just use the tools that are there for each and every individual equally. Right? We'll talk a little bit about what those are in a minute. But this sort of thing, I don't want to waste time. Oh, how much time is it going to take? If only I knew that it was going to be this many hours, then I would do it, right? There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. Let it go. Be in this for life. Decide that you are going to have the best possible memory that you can, and embrace that this is a journey. You don't know where it's going to take you, but it's going to be great. Why? Because having a better memory is obviously great. You get to remember more of your life. You get to speak more languages. You get to have a greater grasp of history. You get to remember the names of people. You get to remember facts about them. You get to be able to just have more music in your mind at a moment's notice. If you want to pick up an instrument and play it, you get to have so many things. If you listen to the interview with Tony Buzan on the podcast, he has this great speech where he talks about all the things that he would like to do if he could live forever. Of course, I would spend hours and months and years or whatever he's saying there. I didn't memorize exactly what he's saying, but he goes through this long list of all the amazing things. And you could tell just how much he has had due to being able to remember more of things. And I don't have any fantasy of being able to get all of anything. Focus on the 80-20 rule. Focus on knowing the planning fallacy, but planning anyway. The planning is often more important than the plan itself, and planning again and again and again and again in order to harvest as much as that rich life as we can. I've got more tools coming up for you about that that'll help you a great deal. But the point is that if you get your knickers in a bunch over, there's not enough time, you're just racking your brain against yourself. You're racking the shotgun of time against you instead of harnessing its power for you. Time is a wonderful, wonderful tool that you can leverage to create momentum and force and flow. But if you get scarce around it, you are beating yourself up for nothing. It's not going to be your advantage. So make it a helper, not a hindrance. It's very, very important. Tirola says, exactly, that's what motivates me. Awesome. Reclaiming Life says, Calvinism versus Arminianism. I don't know that word. Arminianism. So I was whipping off this this Roald Dahl poem like it was no thing last time we were met together, but Arminianism was not coming off the tongue quite so. We need Roald Dahl to rewrite that word. No, it's a beautiful word. Arminianism are quite safe topics to not get removed, but what was great when a theology professor of mine chose it as a text for a class I was in, and we got into a debate about the meaning of the author. Amazing. Well, I want to read this. I don't know what this Arminianism is, but now my mouth is getting a little bit better. All right. So, wonderful. So get rid of all this worrying about time. And the other thing that I really think you should get rid of is worrying about whether it's going to be a success or not. Really? How can you worry about unknown things? Let go of the outcome. Let it go. It's play. It's play with your mind. It's just playing around. And if you're worrying about whether it's going to work or not, you don't have that wonderful attitude of conquering, the unknown. Isn't it better to have that risk that is not going to work, and yet you're able to look back and say, oh well, instead of, I wish I would have done that. Don't live a life where you are filled with I wish, I wish. No, 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 and 1,000 times no. Worrying about whether it's going to work or not is not the path to success. Embracing the adventure and giving yourself the best possible knowledge in advance as you advance is the great policy. So how do you do this? Let's talk about some rules to follow for success, because people like the word rules. And these are rules. They're good rules. Craft an attitude of abundance, right? So you have more time than you think. Everybody does, right? You have all the time in the world, literally. And you know why that's true? Because right now is happening equally for all people. And you can get out that pen and pencil we were talking about earlier, and you can craft a plan. Look at how many pens I have. I got pink, I got red, I got blue, I got black. I have no end of an abundance of pens upon which that I can craft a plan for how I'm going to harvest the power of time. Abundance, right? And there's an abundance of all kinds of tools everywhere. There's just books coming out of every corner. Abundance is everywhere. You can go to the library, you can go wherever, and just embrace that wonderful attitude of abundance. Now, there's a bit of a trap, because people could say, oh, but there's too much to read. How will I find the time, etc. You just got to think of the 80-20 rule. There is too much to read, but if you just keep reading, you'll find that things connect a lot more than you'd think. There's a mathematical principle that really sort of allows you to see that there's a lot less than one would think, and you're able to get more than you imagine possible, but not if you're not on the road. You've got to be on the road, and you've got to have this attitude of abundance. I am a person who has abundant time because I plan to have abundant time. I am a person who has abundant memory palaces because I show up and create them. I am a person who has an abundance of creativity because I understand what creativity is. Now, don't just say those things to yourself. Saying it isn't going to do anything. Actually make the plan to show up and do it, right? And get it in writing on paper. And then, don't try to be perfect about it, because you might make a mistake and you might fall off the horse one day, etc., etc. But put it on the calendar and rock and roll. Put it out there. Do it. Get it done progressively. Even if you only get 20% done on your to-do list, at least you had a to-do list and you've got it out there. You're moving forward. And then in terms of creativity, there's so many people that are, I'm not creative. Well, actually, you don't need to be creative to be creative. Creativity is usually just the recombination of existing parts. And it can be for points of comparison. It can be points of contrast. It can be all kinds of things. But all of the best memory techniques are really just the combination of existing parts. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here, people. Your creativity is just diving in, digging in, rummaging around, getting the mental Lego, as I like to think of it, and so forth. So anyway, you don't have to take my word for all the abundance that's out there. A good thinker, I don't agree with everything under the sun that he says, but a good thinker about abundance is Peter Diamandis. I have the link for this TED Talk down below. I chose this screenshot, of course, about libraries of books and music, the abundance that everybody has, and abundance of time as well. So watch that TED Talk. It's wonderful, wonderful, and you'll see just how much abundance you have right now and how your attitude of abundance should be massive, because it's possible. It's possible. All right, so we're going to check in with a couple other rules for success, but let's check in with the chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And Tiroles says, I already know that it'll work for me. I'm just eager to finish a big memory palace I'm working on. Well, great, and enjoy that big memory palace. We recommend smaller ones, but it is good to have experience with bigger ones as well. So great, great, great. And Reclaiming Life says it's pronounced Arminianism, based on the teachings and the views of Jacob Arminius, as opposed to those of John Calvin, which lead to Calvinism. And to Tiroles, Claiming Life says, if you're eager to finish a big memory palace, I suggest making multiple smaller ones and just linking them if the memory palace itself is causing you to be eager to finish it, and you should use memory palaces which come naturally to you. Yes, indeed. Although we have to always be cautious about, we use it naturally, it flows off the tip of the tongue, but we should be cautious about the word should, because there's always these exceptions to the rules and guys who surprise us by coming up with all kinds of different variations and so forth and do amazing things. The interview on the podcast with Idris Zogai is a good demonstration of that, and also with Braden Adams today, because he was talking about some variations that he uses also. So what one should do is a little bit perilous, but at the same time good suggestions and guidance to give a try. But yeah, generally, I don't know anybody who actually uses big memory palaces. They call it that, but they're always segmented. They're always collections of multiple small segmentations, even if they use the word singular memory palace. All right. Tiroli says, I think I create a system to memorize hard and strange words. I'm just experimenting with it now. Excellent. Experiment away. That's what we're going to talk about next. Embrace the adventure scientifically. Be the scientist in the laboratory of your own mind. Don't treat it as anything else other than science, in that pure and proper sense of, saying, I'm going to make experiments here. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try again and analyze the results based on what came from the first trial. That's very, very important to do. Oh, Austin Studies is here from Montana. Good to see you, Austin, again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your little wonderful animal creature there. Love that. And wonderful. Thanks for saying hello. All the way from Montana. Got that Zappa line again. But yeah, this is adventure. And this is adventure on the high seas of your mind. What's so beautiful about the adventure of it and the ocean metaphor is that your mind is different from day to day. Your mental experience is just constantly changing. Like reality just racks up these different tensions and releases, and it's just a real trip being alive, isn't it? And so if you really treat it that way and you don't get hung up on things and you allow yourself to make mistakes and you pivot and you learn how to maintain cruising altitude so that even when you get knocked over, you get back up, you're going to have such a great time. So Tiroli says, the problem is not the size of the memory palace more than the content is quite abstract. So Tiroli, that's a great comment. Thank you for that. I don't believe in anything abstract. So give me an example, please, in the chat of what you think is abstract. And let's show just how not abstract it is. Abstraction just simply is never a stopping point. It's never a bottleneck. There is no abstract. I don't buy it anyway. I've yet to see anything that's abstract, except for things that are abstract. But if we're talking about words, words are not abstract. There are ideas that are abstract. There are definitions that may involve abstraction. But no. I've yet to see a word that is abstract. I'm yet to see a sentence that is abstract. I've gone to art galleries and seen things that are abstract, but not information that we need to memorize, other than abstract images at card or memory events. But let's understand that this is scientific, and you could then say, yeah, but what about this? That is kind of abstract, isn't it? And from a memory perspective, I'll probably say no, but I am a scientific person, so when new evidence comes into play, I change what I say, to be sure. All right, so John says, great use of humor, Anthony, regarding I'm not worrying about dying. I'm worried about remembering the nurse's name. Yes, indeed. Well, shouldn't that be how we live? To just embrace this journey until that moment when we can no longer be part of it, and who knows what happens after that. But it's the old Mr. Death principle. Catch you later, says Mr. Death, and he will indeed. So you might as well just enjoy the ride until he's there. One of my favorite Buddhist meditations that Michael Roach goes through is imagining the black dog that's nipping at your heels, ready to take you at any moment. You don't know when, but it's there, right? So why not pat it on the head and be friends? Death is an amazing, wonderful aspect of what it is that we deal with as humans, and yet so many people go in fear of it. Now, I'm not saying that I should necessarily like to die, but that's a bizarre thing to say anyway. How would I know whether I would like to or not? Never been there, right? And it is rather abstract, so to speak, what's going on there. But I assume that it is a place from within one would have no opinion about anything anyway, right? So who cares? Who cares? Really, really, people get so caught up on those things. And I know, because I used to be so terrified of death, so terrified of all kinds of things. I was a terrified little worm in so many respects. So one of the things that we can do is just be super comfortable with death. And I learned a lot about being comfortable with death because I took psychoanalysis, which confronts you purposefully with death anxiety week after week after week. And when you come to, when you're confronted with both conscious, subconscious, unconscious death anxiety week after week of your own volition, and the reason why you go is because you do need to be healed in that regard, you can get over it really quick. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So Pat is here from the Golden Triangle. Yes, don't let anyone should on you. Yes, thank you for that, Pat. Thank you for agreeing. Anyway, I'm very humorous about death. Who knows? I mean, I've never gone to the doctor and then they said, well, you're going to die, and then who knows? So I could be having a bit more bravado, but who knows? I'd like to think that I'd be ready and prepared for it, because one of the things that happened to me when I started to meditate in the more, shall we say, robust manner was I kind of woke up, as they say, as Sam Harris put it, waking up, and I thought, oh, damn, now I got to be here for the rest of my life. Then I had a problem with time. You know, it's just, okay, here we are. Let's go. As I believe it was Samuel Beckett who said, I can't go on. I'll go on. Anyway, a little bit of gallows humor. Never hurt anybody. Candle says, I used self-hypnosis affirmations for decades before studying in New York City. Excellent, Candle. Whereabouts in New York City? I used to live up in Washington Heights, a little bit in Dumbo as well for a short while. Wonderful, wonderful. I like New York. Lots of memory palaces there. Did you ever go to Tannins? Tannins was great. I'm not sure if it's still there. Reclaiming Life says, I have some big memory palaces, but they're places I know intimately, such as houses that are about 20 rooms per floor of the house. But you're right, they are segmented by the floor that it's on. Indeed. Yes, I mean, segmentation is inevitable, right? Not only is the room segmented from the house, but the floor is segmented from the other floor, and the wall is segmented from the other wall, and the corner is segmented from the two walls that make the corner possible. The floor is segmentable from, you know, it's just like to the nth degree. Segmentation. Michael Roach, yeah, he's, I don't know him to be English, but I imagine he's an American, and I don't know that he's into Mahayana, but he's usually talking about Tibetan Buddhism, but he's the author of The Diamond Cutter, which is a great book. And he's an interesting cat that I like because of his entrepreneurial background. I like the entrepreneurial guys typically, like James Swartz also has this entrepreneurial background because it's just kind of a cool thing. But early when I was learning these techniques and also starting to bring them together with meditation around 2009-ish or so, I'd heard hours and hours of his recordings. He's a talker, and so I'm not sure where in his vast library of audio offerings and video offerings this would be, but he had walked people through a particular meditation, and I was very impacted by it because he really shows that the memory palace technique was in that tradition, which has been cross-referenced in many other books since then as part of Buddhism as well. So, yeah, I think that we're talking about the same guy. Tiroli says, rules for Portuguese syntax like conjunction or expressions as, what, for, as, while, etc. Tiroli says subjunctive, what a word. So here's why that's not abstract from a mnemonic perspective. Subway sandwich, right, is at the junction of Liver Street, right? So subjunctive. Now we've got that to work with, and So we instantly remove any abstraction by starting to give it imagery. Now we can actually use a Subway restaurant as a memory palace. We can start to build in that memory palace in such a way that we can memorize 5, 6, 10 examples of what these sorts of sentences are like, and then we don't have to have it be abstract. So I just don't buy the abstract thing for that reason, right? Now, in terms of, what a word, it's just a word like anything else. Why? It's the mind that makes subjunctive different than Bill. It's not, it's got more letters. That's it, right? It doesn't have the reference to Bill, but it does have a referent, right? And so your mind makes it harder. Remember, Neo, there is no spoon. It's just the mind that's making it different. It's got more letters. That's it. It's got more syllables, right? It refers to something different. But I can tell you that Bill is a heck of a lot more complex, or at least equally complex, to Portuguese syntax. It's just the mind is making it so. So get out of your mind and don't make things different that way. They're not. They're only in your mind different. And you can use the same tools. So there you go. All right. Tiroles, use phrases with examples of each. Yeah, that's basically what I said. Thank you, Reclaiming Life. Use phrases with examples of each to help you learn grammar rules. That's how I've been learning Russian grammar, which is much more complicated than Portuguese grammar. I'm familiar with both. And Tiroles says, I use this word, Anthony, for that. All right. Excellent. Okay, Reclaiming Life says, yes, it's him. He was the first English native to the USA who focused on the diamond cutter technique and wrote a book on it. Mahayana Buddhism is the general Tibetan view, with or without esoterica. Okay, great. Yeah, I haven't looked. I'm not that familiar with Buddhism. To be honest, I think there's a primacy effect or a God virus effect in anybody being interested in or beholden to anything. So I hope never to be. And I don't know to what extent that I'm even successful in that, but usually those guys have something in their text that gives a similar message, but it's just not marketable at the end of the day to be as radio silence as I am now. Let all that stuff go. It doesn't really matter. Know as much as you can. Cross-index it as much as you can, and be beholden to none. Speaking of which, who would like... Let me know in the chat. If I don't get enough, I ain't going to do it. But should I do this? No, I think I'll wait. But the back cover text for my next book is available, but I'm going to wait. I was going to read it to you, but I think I'll wait. But speaking of things coming up, if you're wanting one of 2 free copies of Ultra Learning, which will come with one of the remaining copies of The Memory Connection, we will be sending an email out tomorrow with some details about how you could win one of those. So make sure that you have my email address whitelisted so that you can receive the opportunity to get one of those. Very important. So embracing the scientific adventure of it all is very, very important. And if you're not scientific about it, then you're really missing out. What do we mean by science? Well, science is simply a tool for gathering evidence based on experimentation, based on hypotheses. So you have a hypothesis like people can improve their memory using memory palace techniques and related mnemonics. So because we know that this is the case and we have endless evidence that people do it, I will make the evidence that supports the claim because their brains are the same as my brain, more or less. So I should be able to do it too. How do they do it? Oh, they create memory palaces and they memorize stuff. And they use these tools. So I will learn them and I will go forth. And then, oh, they say, well, sometimes they make mistakes. Well, I'll make mistakes too. And then I'll learn from those mistakes to get better. Oh, and they say that it's not really about the outcome. It's more about the journey. I'll adapt that attitude too and see how it works out for me. And if it doesn't, then I'll think about how I can maybe make a better attitude, etc., etc. So embrace the scientific adventure. And there's tools involved. And like we said, it is sort of a mistake to not have all the tools in place as such, but it's the mistake that's okay to make. But then you got to gather the tools progressively and sharpen each and every one with practice. Very, very important. sharpen them, make them better over time. And as you add new tools, play around with them, you might not use all of them, but as you add new tools, they will bring the existing ones into relief. And that relief in and of itself will sharpen them to a certain extent and then allow that sharpening to improve your practice. So, Reclaiming Life says, I study, learn, and strive to understand as many religions, including atheism, since it helps me to understand the people who believe that way better. I don't care about the folklore, mythology, or beliefs behind them individually. I just like to be able to relate as many people in as many ways as possible. Excellent, excellent. Now, I don't know if you mean to include atheism as a religion, but I would say that it isn't. I'm assuming you don't mean that, but no, and 1,000 times no. Atheism is not a religion, and it doesn't require belief in anything, regardless of what anybody says. All atheism is the state of being unconvinced by the beliefs of others, typically because they have no evidence that really indicates why anybody should believe anything. Belief is just so unwarranted, so unnecessary. It is the great poison that is strangling the planet as we speak, is that people believe in things for which there's no good evidence to believe them. Now, we must be kind, because there's also an abundance of evidence that will drown you to try and keep up with. But that's where modesty and humbleness and willingness to collaborate with others to come to some sort of consensus is helpful and nice, and that is itself its own challenge, etc., etc. But belief is the great poison of our time and of all time, really. Try to get out of believing things. It should not be necessary. There's that should again, but in this case, I think it's a should that's warranted. All right, so another rule to follow for success is to read memory books. New ones, old ones. If you can't afford to get one, make sure that you have the opportunity to get Ultra Learning, so you can read a new book, but don't miss your Bruno, don't miss your Thomas Aquinas, don't miss your Aristotle, don't miss your Plato, don't miss your Rhetorica ad Herennium, don't miss any of that old stuff, because it makes the new stuff much, much more powerful. Keep reading. Read, and read some more. And don't stop. Because while you're worrying about the nurse's name on your deathbed, you should also be asking her for a book recommendation so that you can have yet one last book in your casket or with you as you go into the flames of cremation. So that's very, very important. Read. So many people would do so much better if they would just book some time aside to read, but not just read new books and old books, right? And I know that old books can be very, very, very challenging. But then again, so can new books. But you want to expand your competence, right? You want to be able to take on more and more challenging reading. And if you have trouble, get Word Power Made Easy, right? It will help you. Always expand your vocabulary. Always expand your capacity for reading challenging material. Always read. I think that I can wear that out pretty soon, but I will repeat it. Read, please. There's so many people who have so much knowledge at their fingertips, but they're just not reading. And they're reading from screens, which is just, don't read from screens. Get books. Get books, please. Now, on the podcast with Nir here, who wrote Indistractable, he talks about some distinguishing factors there. He still reads on the screen, but he also reads real books, and I don't disagree. It's one of those should problems, but I just have yet to see the intelligent person say, oh, no, only digital. That's the great way. No, I don't hear that from anybody. I hear let's balance the baby with the bathwater, but and not throw the baby out. But at the end of the day, really, there's very, very few arguments that hold water that you should not be reading physical books. Read them. They're very powerful. All right. So Candle agrees. Excellent. Reclaiming Life says, asking for book recommendations. If I can't get through the book in a day to learn it and where the person who recommended it came from, something is wrong with me. Indeed. And you say, atheism isn't a religion, but many people who hold it dear to them view it in a nearly religious aspect. What you just explained is much closer to how I understand agnosticism. Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I'm not sure that the agnosticism, atheism, semantics is my game to get into right now. But what I would say is that I don't disagree that there are people who hold their positions dear, but that's a misunderstanding of what the term atheism means, because atheism is not a position. It's not a position. It's just simply a state. Now you can say, oh, but isn't a state a position? Well, no, it's not. It's a state of not being convinced by the evidence. For what? For a particular claim, and that claim has to do with things that relate to the presence of a supernatural being, typically. So one is not necessarily an atheist of all things. One is and being the isness of being an atheist. It's just a simple state that I'm not convinced by your claims. Your evidence is not convincing, right? Because most credible atheists, most of whom don't even like to have that term because it's so ridiculous to need a word to explain that you're just not convinced by evidence. So it's just a label, right? You just simply, that's it. There's nothing more to it. So people who are beholden to that position probably just don't understand what atheism is. They just simply don't understand what that proposition is. The state of not being convinced by your claim about a particular thing. So that's it. Austin Study says, okay, true, excellent. Kyle is in the Memory Palace with us today. Hello, Kyle. Good to see you. How do you distinguish between good and bad information when learning memory techniques? Also, what is the difference between speed reading and skimming? Good questions. So I mentioned that I'm going to be doing a new book here. I've already started writing the new book while I'm waiting for the new book. And it's going to have a chapter on speed reading. And the thing that I will say in that chapter is that, yes, there is such a thing as speed reading, but I don't recommend it. And skimming intelligently has its use in context, and it is only recommendable in a context. And in terms of how do you distinguish between good and bad information when learning memory techniques? Kyle, do you mean good and bad information about memory techniques, or good and bad information that you would memorize using memory techniques? I think I know what you mean, but I want to clarify before we carry on. And thank you for being here. Claiming Life says, digital books are for speed and convenience. I would much rather have physical books, but there are times when I want to start reading it before having the physical book, or the cost is prohibitive. Yeah, look, I'm not going to bandy about too much about that. It's really, caveat emptor at the end of the day. And everybody, I'm certainly not free from having read the odd digital book, and sometimes I have to do that as well. But at the end of the day, I think well, let's just go on to the next point. Embrace the truth and the limits of things. So sometimes those are the limits. We do need to have some digital books in our life. That's just the way it is. And it would be silly to throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one. But a rule of a success is just to embrace the truth. Embrace the truth of your memory. Embrace the truth about what information is. Embrace the problems that we talked about in study hacks, such as the Faust problem. And, deal with it. Get tools that get you past it if you suffer from it, so that you actually can have the magic and the mystery that dwells within and now exists for you to capture. And just the limit is where the power is, not in this fantasy woo-woo nonsense of ultra powers and all that sort of stuff. The real power that we have here on planet Earth comes from embracing the limits, being very, very focused on what can be true in the context in which it is true, without generalizing it onto everything else, without making sweeping woo-woo nonsense statements that can't possibly be true, catching ourselves doing it because everybody does it, and just owning it, that there's functions of language, problems of language that almost force us to talk that way from time to time. And it's why you'll see some of the most intelligent people make the most egregious faux pas from time to time. And then they correct themselves. And, there's all kinds of rabid media that's ready to pounce. Oh, they said X in this formulation of a sentence. Oh, no, they're whatever. And then they use some words that we're no longer allowed to say in a free society, to scapegoat that individual in that moment based on some sentences, right? So, and you know what? Sometimes they deserve a little bit of that, but we need more limits that we embrace, and we understand the role of language and so forth. And it has been called the prison house of language, right? And we can escape it. I think it was Frederick Jameson who used that term, the prison house of language. We can actually, by embracing its limits, we can transcend it to a certain extent. But notice that transcend is itself just a word, right? That's pointing to a concept that, is not as abstract as it seems relative to your functioning mind right now and its ability, its competence to handle these exchanges. And I believe all people can expand their consciousness and expand their capability and their competence to have better conversations, to have a greater vocabulary by which to enter the public discourse and have better conversations. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But the way that they will do it, if they're going to do it, is by embracing the truth and the limits of all things. And so, let's see here. Reclaiming Life says to Kyle, the way to distinguish between good and bad memory techniques can only be determined by what works for you and yields success. Yes, that's true. Kyle says, thanks for clearing that up. Makes a lot of sense. What works for one may or may not work for another. Yes, Kyle, that is one of those sort of generalizations that I think sounds good, but is not actually the way I think that we could better describe it. Here's the way I think that we need to do this. And I think it's the most powerful way. And by the way, if you're just joining us, hit thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and join the discussion and be active and engaged, because that's what makes these conversations so interesting. And notice the 80-20 rule in effect governing us all as I make that claim or that request. Now, how I would suggest that we think about this is it's not the case that what works for one may not work for another. Not in memory. I don't think that that's possible. The case is that you will encounter these from a perspective, from an existing competence, from a position of readiness and a linguistic preparedness to describe it, etc. But how it's going to work in your neurochemicals is so identical that it's much more the same. And whatever is working for you is working for ways that are much more close than to the other individual than it may seem. What makes this seemingly vast array of differences is precisely that. Different levels of preparedness, different linguistic prolixity and capability with the tongue. Not everybody has read Nabokov and can trip down through the threes and the T's and Lolita and all that sort of stuff. Oh, better not say that. That's probably going to be banned soon too. But, not everybody has that ability to explain things in such a way. And that's why we get this massive variety of explanations, which, if you boil them down, you will see that they're all basically talking about the same thing, and they're describing it in different ways. And of course, everybody is experiencing it to a certain extent in an exactly unique way. How is that possible? Because it's your brain, right? So it can't be experienced the way I'm experiencing it, because I'm experiencing it in my brain. And it can't be experienced the way that guy's experiencing it, or that girl, or whatever, because that's their brain. But your brain is made of the same stuff. It's just that their stuff is not the same stuff, right? So it's the same and different at the same time. But that's just not possible for us to even understand each other in discussion right now if our brains and the powers of language do not have this base level of sameness. It's not possible. At least I don't see how it could be possible, right? It's just so obvious. It's just it's almost like a mathematical constant, a foundation that must be the same in order for the pathways of expression to ever mean anything. For the vast polysemy of potential iterations in language to have any purchase, and I'm starting to purposefully vary my diction to be more and more complicated in order to sort of get at this. You're following the plot, even if you don't follow all these words that I'm amping up a little bit. It's just to show how that happens. And if you watch the Mandela effect video, you'll notice that I had some misspelled words on the screen, which you could perfectly read, even though they were misspelled, even though they were jumbled up, right? It's because there's the sameness in your neurochemistry that can decode the same as every other brain in order to do that, provided that that brain has English as its mother tongue or has acquired it through learning that enables it to solve that puzzle, to crack that code. So when people come to memory techniques, it's not different for them. They've just cracked the same code, more or less, to use the techniques in more or less the same way, but there's this vast abundance of explanations that make it seem like there are a lot more ways to do things than there actually are. But no, there really aren't. It's spatial mnemonics. It's the use of multisensory imagery, which are mnemonics, right? So it's nested mnemonics, basically, or what Jordan Peterson calls in Maps of Meaning, what does he call them? Nestic. So I said nestic mnemonics, but he just calls it nestic memory, right? M-N-E-S-T-I-C. So that is to say it is the memory of memory, right? Or the technique by which memory gets remembered. It is nested. So this is a little outside of my lane, so to speak. But nonetheless, it's precisely because of the correlation of similarity that difference is possible. And that difference must exist in a foundation. It's like computers, right? So the very fact that software can be played in two different computers, two different operating systems, is because of the similarities of the rules that govern it, because of the similarities of the off and on of the electricity, because of this, that, and the other thing. And all that difference rests in the foundation of the same. Seems pretty clear to me, even if I'm not explaining it in the best possible way. All right, I hope that mumbo-jumbo-ness, it actually has more clarity in it than it sounded like to my own ears. But yeah. I got to write it out. One of these days I got to write it out. Oh, I have. Great. Next book coming out soon. Goes all through this in much clearer prose with the help of a very good professional editor from a professional editing house. Man, it's such a great thing to read your writing when it's been gone through by a pro. All right. So, Reclaiming Life says, speaking of study hacks, you had a webinar this last week I wasn't able to attend, but hope for a replay of. Never got an email about the replay. Right, great. So that is now available in the Mastermind, in the Memory Vault. So check that out there. Relax your memory. Yes, there are a few left for Habit Mastery Formula. Jimmy has changed the name of that. So we do want, just email about that. Reclaiming Life says, you want to vary the diction simply to appease the bots as well. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Yeah, so one of the things about the bots is I don't think that that's going to to appease them, but one of the weird things that's happened to me over the years, and I'm glad that it's happened, is just the simplification of my own language, because I can't understand my own dissertation when I look, oh, what the heck was I talking about? Because it's just, I was trained at that time to just use the words that I was reading, right? And it's more than the words, it's actually the diction. And so there's a lot of problems that come from speaking that way. And I'm not a fan of the often quoted and very bizarrely quoted, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. That's just nonsense. That's just one of the most rubbish quotes in the world. And I don't care who said it, because most of the people who say it haven't actually known where exactly it comes from. But it's not true that you don't understand it if you can't explain it simply. It's that a lot of people aren't trained in explaining things simply. It's just that simple. But they do understand. There are also a lot of people who understand things very, very well, but they can't even explain it in complicated ways. And that for whatever reason, they just don't hope to open their mouths up. That said, the next sort of rule is to expand your critical thinking, because I was blown away by some of the strange formulations of the Mandela effect that came in the chat beneath this video on the Mandela effect. So the link to this is in the description below. And this is a very puzzling topic to me. And I'd love to hear more from you joining us now, what your thoughts are, and maybe join the battle with me there, because there's some real strange thinking. But there's also a couple of people who showed up and at least spoke a little bit more at length about why they think the Mandela effect is real and so forth. But one of the best tools that you can have for better memory and being able to embrace the power of mistakes is expand your critical thinking. So that's one reason why I dove into the Mandela effect, and the podcast version will come out this week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Mandela effect in the discussion, and again, the link to that video is below. But what's more important there is to read through some of the thinking, because I think a lot of it is sloppy. I think a lot of it is lazy. I think a lot of it is actually downright insulting to the individual, that they would expect anybody else to take them seriously the way that they're dodging things. And I think that part of the reason why they are dodging it is because their memory is obviously flawed, and they know it, and they can't actually sunder up what it is that they're talking about precisely because of the memory flaws, but they go at it anyway. And I would love to see your replies as well. William, I don't know, maybe you replied there under a different username, but we need a little more feedback on that one, because it's bizarre what people have written there. And it may be bizarre that I am spending so much time trying to pull more out of them. But, I've said, yeah, you can come on my podcast, but give me a better reason to come on the podcast than this. I'm not so much interested in guys theorizing endlessly about this. I want to know the critical thinking tools that they're using, and I want to know what evidence they're bringing up. And I don't want that evidence to be, well, I just remember it that way, because that was the point of the video. It's that your memory of it being that way is not evidence of it having been that way. All right. So anyway, the point here is if you want more success in dealing with the mistakes that you're going to make with memory, expand your critical thinking, because critical thinking is a way for you to be able to deal with those mistakes better, because you'll have more critical distance from them. You'll see the role that they play in the expansion of human individuals, and you'll just embrace it, and you'll be a better person as a result, and have a lot more fun in life as a result. So Reclaiming Life says, one of the things about the bots is, they're not human anyway. Yeah, well, I like to think of bots as something we can embrace a little more. Well, I won a contest one time for using a term which was bots, boring old tools succeeding, and maybe that can be. But it's not just the bots, it's the bots plus meat. And MEAT, you may remember, is one of my older favorite acronyms for meaningless edutainment, absurdly thriving. And man, have the bots ever been giving me a lot of meat lately, because I get so many advertisements from so many bizarre things that obviously have nothing to do with anything that I'm interested in. But I'm getting more and more targeting of certain memory trainings, and it's really fun, actually, at the end of the day, but a bit alarming, because they're chewing up so much of their ad spend, showing it to their quote-unquote competitor. Indeed. Funny. All right. Reclaiming Life asks, have you ever done any studies on social engineering as well as implanted memories? Yes, indeed. We want to do something on implanted memories at some point in the future. I'm not sure when that will be. And social engineering is something that I've read a lot about. And obviously, anybody who is doing anything in the world is part of it at some level. It's just a matter of how intelligently or ethically that one does it. But we are engineering each other all the time. It's just a matter of our conscious awareness of doing it. And we also make it possible by participating in it, often without any effort to expand our critical thinking. So anyway, again, you can get more power out of the mistakes you make if you're more equipped with critical thinking. And if you read the chat or the discussion under the Mandela effect video, one of the things that you'll see there is that someone said, I memorized so many hundreds of Russian words using the magnetic memory method. And my response was, well, then I'd like you to go and memorize just as many, fallacies and biases and critical thinking tools so that you can come back and say more intelligent things about the Mandela effect. Or give me the evidence that I'm wrong and that the Mandela effect really does exist, as you say. Give it a better definition than the one that nobody seems to have redefined there. And maybe read Long Walk to Freedom. might help. All right. William says, you want to make bots into something you can embrace. You may want to ask your wife if she's okay with you embracing bots. Well, my wife listens to Frank Zappa too. So there is I think you know where I'm going if you know Joe's Garage. All right. Can we say that? Can we sing any of that German here on YouTube without getting plugged by the robots? All right. Oliver is in the house. Good to see you, Oliver. You loved the Mandela Effect episode. First time I ever heard it mentioned was on the new X-Files. Hadn't thought about it for a while, but brought back some good memories. Oliver, thanks. I appreciate you saying so. And, I'd love to hear you on that video. It really helps make this work reach more people and gives more longevity to the Magnetic Memory Method project. I know you're busy, but I appreciate every little bit of support because every little short sentence helps me continue helping you. So please, if you can, go back and say hello and join in the discussion there. It really is about embracing the bots. So like I said to a few seconds ago, I think that there's some more positive ways we can embrace them. And one of the ways that we can do that is by not keeping silent, but leaving lots of comments on all the videos in order to tell those bots that humans care about this, because there's no, person sitting over at YouTube and saying, oh, look, there's people who watch this, but they don't comment. There's metrics that are triggered. And the more that you guys are engaged in this, yes, I appreciate that not everybody has all the time to do so, but 80-20 rule in effect. The more people we can get participating, the greater longevity this project has, the greater reach that it has, and the more impact we're able to make as a community, so that we can better have a life that's going to be worth living, because there aren't so many people making decisions or failing to vote or whatever it is that's going to happen that makes our species thrive better and better and better, because we have better and better intelligence amongst ourselves, better communication, better respect because we remember each other's names, all that sort of stuff. So the more that you can help not just myself, but all the memory people who are out there working so hard to encourage and inspire people to use their memories, the better. So if you haven't hit thumbs up yet, do so now. Go watch the Mandela Effect video and get engaged there. Thumbs up in the comments. And the more that you can, the more that we will be able to make an impact, because we really can. Change is possible. The future can be programmed, so to speak, and we can do it if we get together. And we can make the difference. We can make the world the place that we would like it to be. And, maybe it is just good the way that it is. But why not at least make the attempt? And speaking of that, in order that we might make the attempt with as much impact as possible, we want to make our memory training holistic. So it's not just about memory, but it's also about diet, so that we remember to eat better, so that our brain has proper fuel. And it's not an easy path. There's so much conflicting information out there. You've got to be as scientific about your food training as you do about your mind training. You've got to be as scientific about your sleep as you do about your memory training. You've got to be as scientific about your fitness as you do about your memory training. And all of this needs to be holistic in your life. Meditation, being with friends and family, and really interacting socially with as many people as you can to get all those wonderful brain chemicals unlocked, so that you are part of the world and not, starving yourself of so many great things, so much great food, so much great sleep and literature and all the stuff that we need. So be holistic about it. And it's not beyond anybody's reach. All it requires is having a vision and a plan. And I'm so delighted that even this morning I wake up and there's yet another comment about somebody watching the memory vision statement replay, which I was going to remove from YouTube, but I guess I'm glad that I didn't. I am glad that I didn't, because it continues to get comments from people who appreciate it, taking it, and so forth. Have a vision and a plan for your memory training, and allow mistakes to be part of it, so that you can move forward, so that you can actually get to where you want to go and have this wonderful, wonderful life. And let go of the need for any outcome. You know, you can be a sheep or you can be a leader who stands up. Like I said earlier, Gene Simmons has this great, great talk about the gopher, the one gopher that stands up and says, I'm going to be the one that makes a stand, makes a difference, is that unique individual. And you can too. But one of the things that I think just is a huge differentiator amongst those who are top performers and those who keep their head buried under the sand is that so many people are afraid of making mistakes that they will not be able to let go of the outcome if they do make a mistake. And yet you will. So you've got to have that joyous scientific life of making experiments and just studying what happens, just seeing the results. Forget about getting it right. You'll get it right sooner by being willing to make the mistakes and dive in. And please do. Because otherwise you're locking yourself into, one of these days I got to come up with a memory technique for dealing with mirrored techniques or mirrored images here. It was so funny. I was interviewing Braden today about his memory competition stuff, and I was thinking, I've had people on the podcast before, just really high performing memory competitors and so forth. And we make these little odd faux pas, these little odd mistakes. And I get emails saying, I can't believe that this person was so good with their memory, and yet they clearly don't have a very good memory when they're on your podcast. I'm never going to get their book, or I'm never. And it's just like, you missed the point. We use these techniques to achieve particular goals, right? And I'll never forget coming back from Canada to Germany and first time back at the rehearsal studio with my band. And I was like, yeah, well, this is how I competed. Did half as well as a guy with 2 Guinness World Records. And they're like, oh, only half as well. And they're jibing me and so forth. And it's funny in that context. But then these emails, like people are taking it way too seriously. Of course, everybody's just a normal average Joe. And as I told my band on that day, I said, no, I'm like the Flash, I can forget that I have a date with a hot woman or whatever. But when push comes to shove, if I need those memory techniques, we're on, right? And I will do the best that I possibly can. And rarely is there a mistake to be made. And when I did compete that time, I got every single card right, even though my competitor tried to psych me out, tried to steal points, etc. 0 mistakes, right? So, and if it had been bad, I don't know what would have happened. But I already had let go of the outcome before we started and just enjoyed the ride. And that's what everybody needs to do, whether you compete or not. Every exam you go to, do the best that you can and let go of the outcome. You can't control it. The roof could collapse. You going to worry about that too? No. This is what distinguishes the top performers or just the people who have joy in life from those who don't, is they let go. They stop being a control freak over every little last detail, and they allow themselves to dive in and enjoy. All right, so Reclaiming Life says, the more people who talk, even if just one reply with an emoji, the algorithm will rate it higher. Indeed. Have you been in contact with Chris Hadnagi about social engineering and ideal guests, since he has had many great ones on his podcast? The Social Engineering Podcast. No, I haven't. Can certainly endeavor to look that up. But yeah, maybe there's some interesting people there. If I have one weakness is that I haven't hired somebody to do all that stuff for me, but I probably should, is have an outreach person who can do all of that, make the connections for me, because I'm a little bit more in my book world and so forth, writing books and stuff, and it's such an 80-20 rule sort of thing that I should probably getting more out of it, but there's more, the ROI can be quite low on the outreach stuff. So you say it's about the studies of it's about things like looking at the studies of Longo to see how much diet, fasting, and exercise can have on longevity, and now using our own studies and practices as well. I use them to do things like improve my relationships with people. I don't care if 7 of spades was after 2 of diamonds. Cards are just for fun and practice. Yeah, indeed. I mean, one should only care if you are doing a mem deck routine and you need to get it right for the case of the performance, but you also need to let go of the outcome, because if you don't get it right, you need an out, right? And so the more you're able to let go of the outcome in a flash, then the more you're going to save the day if you make a mistake in performance. So it's kind of both, right? Care and not care. Just a general rule of success. And then, of course, the other rule of success is enjoy and pass it on. Pass it on. Teach others. Be that joy of these techniques. Demonstrate it. Make it possible for people so that they can have that joy too. You can light so many other candles if you are the bright light. All right? So Gaurav is in the house. Good to see you, Gaurav, again. Wonderful. You say, when I exercise, I cannot concentrate on studies effectively. I'm not sure what you mean. Exercise, like fitness at the gym or whatnot. I would think that physical exercise, which is very good, would allow you to concentrate more. But let us know more about that. Before we go, we had 3 Memory Palace mistakes that you can enjoy and embrace and learn so much from. Jimmy and I are looking for help to improve our course. So we only have a limited amount of opportunities left, but email me if you would like to get a coupon code for that. All we're asking for is some feedback and a review of that course when you're done. Jimmy's a great guy, and I hope that you'll have an opportunity to learn from him. And we are going to release an email tomorrow about how you can get a free copy of Ultra Learning. I have 2. I actually have 3, but I'm keeping one for myself. And I just have a very few set of copies left of the Memory Connection. 2 people will win one of these and one of these. And Scott and I will get together to announce the winners later this month. So make sure you're on my email list in order to get information about that. I was thinking, should I really require email list for this? And then I thought, well, that's the way I said it originally. So I may change my mind, but I have been changing my mind about changing my mind. And yeah, I think what we're going to do is stick with the program. All right. So those are those opportunities for those of you who are interested. And again, just enjoy these skills as you develop them. And as soon as you develop them, start to pass it on to others. You'll learn it better, and you'll also start to make an impact in the world, because those people will be nudged towards looking into it themselves. And even if they just become, spectators who enjoy some of this discussion of memory, that's great as well. The more the merrier, the better. So Gaurav says, running and exercise. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe you need to get some advice from somebody who knows more about this than I do. I don't know if we have a doctor in the house, but even if we did, you'd be duty bound to go see an actual doctor. So please do. Claim Life says, if you can't talk your way out of a failure, you have work to do with yourself first. Indeed. Claim Life says, the very first trick I teach to children is one where I magically find their card and then use their magic to change it to a different card. Excellent, yes. So there's no mistakes in magic if you know what you're doing. And that's very, very important. Obviously, as we learn magic, we do make mistakes from time to time. I certainly have. I've had the red face blush from making mistakes, and it's normal. It happens to everybody in their learning journey. But the sooner you can get over it and move forward, the better. It's very, very everybody's capable of doing so as soon as today. It's not that difficult. So if you haven't taken the free course at magneticmarymethod.com, please do. There's always lots to learn there. I'm very happy that so many people have continued to benefit from it over these years. And if you haven't, then what's stopping you? Make sure you do so today. Getting started today is a good policy, don't you think? Because when else is there except for now? I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, all about how that you can make mistakes, can embrace them, and learn more as a result, learn faster as a result, and let go of those outcomes. And, well, there's lots coming up soon. And William says, of course, if I fail to change their card, the random one I pick is the same as them. I say their magic is stronger than mine. Excellent, excellent. And indeed, that is the whole point of enjoying and passing it on. Their magic is indeed stronger than ours. The potential that is out there, if we just tell the truth about how these memory techniques work and encourage more people to use them, you can help create the furthering of the great mnemonics renaissance during a time where Skynet is almost certainly nigh, but not exactly as one would think. Nothing is ever going to turn out the way that it seems, and I think optimistically about all these matters, even if it's foolish to do so from time to time, and I hope that you do too, because their magic is indeed stronger than mine, and so is yours. So go out there, learn these techniques, put them into practice, practice them consistently. Remember that doing is the origin of consistency that you need in order to get good with these techniques. And as always, come visit me at magneticmerrymethod.com and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I'd give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 679.